Good afternoon, it's Monday, December 7. I'm Anthony Lugg with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Up first this afternoon, more schools were reopened today for face-to-face classes, but the decision is not going down well with the Jamaica Teachers Association JTA. O'Shane Masters reports.
Concern is being raised as the decisions being made to have more schools reopened for face-to-face classes. TVJ News was told that consultations were held with a number of schools which informed the Education Ministry that they were in a position to start classes while adhering to COVID-19 prevention measures. But JTA President Jasford Gabriel says the Education Ministry should be the driving force behind which schools are selected for reopening.
We believe that it's not the schools that should be triggering the reopening and making suggestions for reopening. It's the ministry that ought to take that responsibility after doing the consultations and actually announce which schools are to be opened, because I have no concerns really in terms of the school's capabilities within the physical plant. The real concern, and the one that is difficult to manage, is the movement of persons. The Ministry of Education needs to, I believe, stick with the approach that has been decided on, be out front, taking the responsibility, announcing the schools, without it being triggered from the schools themselves.
He says there are too many unknowns in the equation, such as how the students will be transported to and from school and the level of COVID-positive cases in any given community which the students reside in. This concern follows reports from Acting Permanent Secretary in the Education Ministry, Dr. Grace McLean, last week that 800 students tested positive for the respiratory illness COVID-19.
It's just a few days before the Christmas break. We are seeing, in terms of the spread of the virus and uptick in that. And so we have to balance the desperation to get back to face-to-face with the health issues out there. We think it's far too risky with just a few days to go before we go into the Christmas season to be taking this kind of chance. I believe we should just exercise a little more patience. We've been managing the process, I think, fairly well despite the challenges. Online is getting better for a number of persons, so we just need to exercise patience so that whenever we are able to go back into a face-to-face arrangement, we can actually have a smoother start with institutions and more persons being able to attend for a longer time.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
And with thousands of students scheduled to sit the primary exit profile PEP examination starting in February next year, the JTA president says consideration must be given to the appropriate start date for the exams. Some administrators have suggested that the exams be shifted to April or May of next year. The JTA president supports that view.
February is presuming that we'll be able to get students back at least in some face-to-face arrangements within the shortest possible time. It's just not possible in some scenarios and in some contexts, and so all of that will have to be considered. You want to make sure everybody gets as reasonable an opportunity as possible to do their best. And so it's a national exam, and so we have control over how we can actually execute that. And so pushing back is certainly an option that we need to look at if it's going to provide more time for students and teachers to be more adequately prepared.
Mr. Gabriel says if the exams are to be held in February, some special arrangements will have to be worked out. However, that depends on what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic.
If it is, we are seeing an increase in the numbers and a further uptick, then it's going to pose more challenges as far as administering the exam in the mode that is proposed is concerned. But I believe if we can exercise a good level of control, then we'll be able to bring out small numbers, the students who are doing the examinations at an appropriate time to prepare.
Meanwhile, President of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Linvern Wright, has revealed that at a meeting on Friday with the Education Ministry, principals were given the option of reopening now or in January. Mr. Wright says a number of the institutions which have chosen to reopen will focus on grade 11 students who will be sitting the CSEC exams.
People are more concerned about the grade 11 now, so the time now is going to really be used to bring many of them in a kind of phased way to maybe complete SPs or ensure that maybe some difficult things that they were doing and weren't getting are things that they are going to be going through. But I don't get the impression it's going to be a wholesale thing where the whole school is going to be coming in.
He says the standard procedures will also be followed, including an assessment.
For example, we know that the take-up from the previous, the take-up from the first set of schools, it was about 30% of persons who came out. So parents still have an option, principals still have an option about how they take people in. So it is something that is I think it's managed, and the discretion is something you have to see the level of care people are trying to take, given what they know the risks are.
And economist Chris Stokes does not believe the significant learning loss among students who have been away from school for almost a year has to be a permanent setback if appropriate interventions are carried out. The issue of the poor performances of primary school students on diagnostic tests was among the matters discussed yesterday on Radio Jamaica's That's a Wrap. Mr. Stokes says the learning loss does not have to affect the children for the rest of their lives.
It can be called back. Look, not because you know 100 words at 10 years old means you're going to know 300 words at 30, right? So there are people who, for example, in the U.S. system that I studied in, there are folks who come in at the undergraduate level with great disparities. But by the time you reach to the master's and the PhD level, there is a certain uniformity in the body of knowledge. So because you are behind this year, doesn't mean that you're going to be condemned for life of being uninformed and done. So that's not true.
Jamaica's COVID-19 case count has increased to 11,184. The Ministry of Health says 64 new cases were recorded yesterday. Their ages range from 4 to 81 years. Most cases were recorded in Kingston and St. Andrew, followed by St. Catherine and Westmoreland. It's now time for a break on the midday news. Please stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back. Continuing the news. A virtual Christmas. At least one health professional is suggesting that Jamaicans take their celebrations for the festive season, including Grand Market, online. Associate Professor in Occupational Health and Safety at UTech, Alveston Bailey, believes cancelling the physical Grand Market activities this Christmas could prevent a spike in COVID-19 cases. The details in this report.
Traditionally, Grand Market is held every year on Christmas Eve in all major towns. The activities, which usually run into the early hours of the morning on Christmas Day, will now end at 10 p.m. when the curfew will take effect. 2 weeks ago, Prime Minister Andrew Holness made the announcement urging Jamaicans to observe the health protocols that are in place to limit the spread of the coronavirus. Despite the announcement, Associate Professor in Occupational Health and Safety at UTech, Alveston Bailey, wants the physical Grand Market activities to be cancelled.
My recommendation is that we limit our family gathering to only your nuclear family members to a maximum of 10 persons. Why don't you have a virtual Christmas with your extended family? Let us postpone all Christmas parties. Let us reduce alcohol consumption, which might impair your judgment. We must postpone Grand Market. Let us postpone New Year celebration. Why don't you try outdoor picnics this year for your nuclear family? It's very important to decrease your case fatality, which is primarily affecting the elderly, by creating a COVID-19 bubble around them. Let us therefore avoid unnecessary close personal contact with our loved ones this Christmas. Let us postpone any non-urgent overseas travel this year.
He's suggesting greater use of virtual spaces, specifically to maintain low numbers in gatherings. As for persons who may require medical attention during the Yuletide season, Professor Bailey says telemedicine is an option.
For those who need to keep in touch with their healthcare providers, why don't you use telemedicine as a safe option?
Now, telemedicine is a remote diagnosis and treatment of patients by means of telecommunications technology. It also allows long-distance monitoring of patients. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
The National Road Safety Council says Saturday's death of 2 children on the Goshen Main Road in St. Elizabeth pushed the number of persons killed in traffic crashes in Jamaica since the start of the year to 397. It now appears that Jamaica will again miss the annual below 400 target. Vice Chairman of the Council, Dr. Lucian Jones, says road fatalities remain the second leading cause of violent deaths in Jamaica.
100 127 motorcyclists have died for the year. 82 pedestrians. These are sobering numbers, even staggering numbers. And the National Road Safety Council is committed as the institution which has a parliamentary mandate to reduce road traffic injuries, to continue to do the work that we have been commissioned to do. But we need the policymakers and civil society and the general man in the street to help us to ensure that this remains as a high priority in the country.
It's understood that the Negotiation Main Road crash, the driver lost control of the vehicle in which 2-month-old Gianna Morris and 2-year-old Karif Christie were traveling. The car later hit an embankment and overturned. Both children were flung from the vehicle. They were later pronounced dead at hospital. The driver of the vehicle was warned for prosecution. He is to be questioned today. The Brownstone police are raising concerns about the uptick in motor vehicle crashes along the Orange Valley Main Road in St. Anne. This following another of those incidents recently.
This corner, what we're standing now, we have numerous accidents that have taken place over the past few weeks, and this accident in particular is as a result of speeding.
Corporal Nevers added that the area is usually dark at nights and that there are no signs to indicate to drivers that they are approaching a corner. He therefore wants the authorities to intervene. Mayor of St. Anne, Sidney Stewart, says steps will be taken to address the issue.
To exercise enough caution.
Mayor Stewart contends, though, if motorists continue to ignore the importance of safe driving, simply erecting signs will be a futile effort. He's therefore urging citizens to be careful. And in news overseas, a committee of the European Parliament is expected to vote on a move that could have big consequences for the fight against child sexual abuse. The issue is whether big tech firms can keep scanning social media websites and professional messages to detect predators. Some critics say that's a violation of privacy. More from the CNN.
With countries locked down and people spending more time online, authorities in Europe are sounding the alarm about a rise in sexual exploitation of children.
We have so many signs that grooming is growing rapidly. And that means that perpetrators find children, these children that are being victims. We are obliged, in my view, to protect these children.
For more than a decade, law enforcement agencies across Europe, like Europol, have been able to work with technology firms to scan social media, websites and online communications for evidence of child pornography.
The information that we are receiving through these types of referrals is a great part of our job. And through these referrals, we have been able to identify a number of victims in our own investigations and also prevent further abuse to these children.
We're looking forward to the questions and answers.
But now, a debate of the EU privacy rules could change that. On one side, the EU Commission wants to maintain the status quo and has proposed a temporary piece of legislation that would allow tech companies to continue screening online platforms.
This is about protecting children. It's not that they are into reading everything that somebody is texting on the platforms.
Ja, vielen Dank, Herr Präsident.
On the other hand, some members of the European Parliament, like Patrick Breyer, say the screening is a breach of privacy that could be open to abuse itself.
Examining and searching the content of everybody's digital correspondence is as if the post office were just opening all our letters. All it may achieve is that criminals will be using encrypted channels.
To news and sports now. Despite gaining 6 points, the Reggae Boys remain 5th in the December edition of the CONCACAF Ratings Index. Jamaica gained the 6 points after defeating Saudi Arabia 2-1 in a friendly international last month. Jamaica has 1,555 ratings points. Mexico continues to lead the region with 2,116 points, followed by the United States in second with 1,839 rating points. Costa Rica is third, while Honduras is fourth. Canada, Panama, Haiti, Guatemala, and El Salvador round out the top 10 teams in the CONCACAF Index. The CONCACAF Ratings Index was introduced in 2018 to give teams seedings for regional competitions. And Cuban-born wrestler Lezian Cousin is hoping to realize his Olympic dreams representing Jamaica in Tokyo next year. As Denise Walters reports, Cousin was in Jamaica recently to help prepare for the World Championship in Serbia.
United World Wrestling in October announced the plans to still go ahead with the Wrestling World Championship, an Olympic qualifier from December 12 to 20 in Belgrade, Bulgaria. Leslie and Cousin made the trip from Cuba to Jamaica to prepare for the championships with an eye on Tokyo 2021. However, the World Championship was cancelled due to COVID-19 with a World Cup to replace it in 2021 with dates to be decided. Cousin told TVJ Sports that he will instead switch his focus to the last chance Olympic qualifier to be held next year in Sofia, Bulgaria from April 27 to May 1. Speaking through translator Yamel Salazar, Cousin says he wants to help develop wrestling in Jamaica and reach the pinnacle of the sport.
Para los Juegos Olímpicos sería el sueño de mi vida, ya que llevo muchos años entrenando para lograrlo.
It could be the dream of a lifetime that he has been training for.
He says he's grateful for the support he has received.
He says that he has a very positive communication with the Jamaica Olympic Association.
Meanwhile, President of the Jamaica Wrestling Federation, Osayem Wizio Sogboro, believes in the wrestler's talent as Cousin has medaled for Jamaica. This includes picking up bronze earlier this year at the Pan American Wrestling Championship in Ottawa, Canada, in the 87-kilogram weight class in the Greco-Roman category of the sport.
He has immense potential. He has been representing us for 3 years, and in those 3 years he has won 3 medals. And so we give him our unqualified support in pursuing his wish to participate in the Olympics.
Cousin came to be representing the island through his grandparents, who are Jamaicans. He presented his Jamaican passport to the Jamaica Wrestling Federation. Denise Walters for TVJ Sports.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Anthony Lugg. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.